restricting use. So we refused it on that basis that it didn't accord with the Olney Neighbourhood Plan, with a particular policy in the Olney Neighbourhood Plan, which related to that site. So in that case, the Olney Neighbourhood Plan was very influential in the determination of the application.
So, for example, are there any issues regarding the interpretation of neighborhood plan? For example, as you mentioned of the site R, actually the site R is defined on retail on the neighborhood plan, but site R is so.
And do you know the site I'm talking about?
Yes, right.
Oh, right. Okay.
Site R is retail on the only neighborhood plan.
Yeah. Have you looked into this already?
Yes.
That's quite a coincidence that I happened to bring it up.
Yeah, there are some issues in site R for retail.
Yeah. So you know that we lost the appeal on it. I mean, I will say actually the officer report that went to committee for that application. It obviously it recommended the application for approval because we considered that they'd put forward sufficient evidence to prove that there wasn't any uptake for retail use. They'd marketed it and nobody wanted it. They marketed it for a certain period of time and they said, well, nobody wants it, so we're proposing a different use. And there was provision that I think that there's provision in the I'm not sure if it was in Plan MK to say that you can propose alternative uses for land if it's been robustly evidenced that they're not needed for the purpose for which they've been allocated. And I think from an officer perspective we thought it has been, but the council has obviously disagreed with us. And ultimately the council is the decision maker in that situation. So, they obviously, they lent heavily on the Olney Neighbourhood Plan. They ultimately, refused it. And then that left me in the situation where I didn't even deal with the application when it first came in, but I was left to deal with the appeal. And what I have to do is I had to fight. I had to sort of put forward. I was acting on behalf of the councillors. So whilst I might not have necessarily agreed with their decision, I still had to back it. And that was my job. I had to back it, and I had to make the best argument that I could possibly do. But obviously it didn't work. I was ultimately, we ultimately lost the appeal. But these things happen.
So how about the except to the particular site allocation? How about the neighborhood plans can be used the other applications?
So say that again.
So the according to the only neighborhood plan, the town council designed some particular allocations for the development.
Yeah.
So, but except to them, how can you use the neighborhood plans for the other small development applications? For example, extensions or garden or garage or like that, because most applications are related to the small material changes or development.
Yeah.
But however, only just a few developers cite the neighborhood plans for their proposals, I think.
So what? Are you saying that for?
So how can neighborhood plans be widely used?
How can they be widely used?
Widely used, yes.
I mean, are you talking about places that don't have neighbourhood plans, or
No,
are you saying
within the neighborhood plan? But
within the?
yes, within the neighborhood plan, because some plan officer said the proposal site is within the only neighborhood plan area.
Oh yeah.
But there are no particular policies relating to that proposals. So.
Yeah, exactly, and that's sort of like that's what I touched on earlier. Is that oftentimes, I mean, if you're dealing with an extension, then in my opinion, the most effective neighbourhood plans won't necessarily have policies that guide that guide design of extensions. I mean, they're inconsequential most of the time. It's just somebody wanting to put a single-story extension on the back of their house. I think the purpose of a neighbourhood plan, in my opinion, isn't to sort of guide what single-story rear extensions look like. You know what I mean? The value of designing a policy to deal with that is just, doesn't seem right to me. I mean, and I don't think you could say anything more. I don't think you could set out any additional criteria or any additional policies to guide to guide household extensions than what's already set out in the local plan, than what's already set out in Plan MK. Neighbourhood plans really, in my opinion, should the most effective ones deal with the specifics of the area, and by that I mean they look at the areas within the neighbourhood plan area that are primed for development or that they want to see redeveloped, and they design policies to guide how those areas come forward, how they're developed. I think it's important when an officer writes a report, even if it's for a householder extension, that they note that the Olney neighbourhood plan, that the site might be within the Olney neighbourhood plan, but it's fine to come to the conclusion that there aren't any particular policies that affect the development. Normally that development will be an extension. I mean, it's the same with the Newport Pagnell neighbourhood plan. I don't think there are any particular policies in there that deal with householder extensions. So I don't think there'd be any value. Most of the time, I don't think there'd be any value in neighbourhood plans having policies related to like small scale householder extensions or garages or stuff like that.
Yes, thank you. So do you think the only neighbourhood plan reflect concern and intention and aspiration of town council and those communities?
Sorry, say that again.
So, do you think the neighbourhood plan reflects the concern, aspiration, and intention of town council or the communities?
I think so. To an extent. I mean, we can all there are probably some reasonably accurate assumptions you can make around who's involved in the drawing up of neighbourhood plans. I think you can assume that most of the time that, if I'm being brutally honest, they're going to be people who've got quite a lot of time on their hands to commit to doing that. So you're looking at retirees. You may be looking at people who may be planning professionals as well. But I think generally, I think you can probably say generally, they do capture how the local community might want that neighbourhood plan area to be controlled in terms of the development that's within it. I haven't got any evidence to say otherwise, and they have to. Neighbourhood plans still have to be they still have to be formally adopted. They have to be,